I'm Yuri Lifshitz, founder and CEO of Superdao, a one-click DAO formation platform, all in one place where you can start and grow your DAO organization. So there are two definitions of what the DAO is, and they are different. And so a lot of people are confused, and there is a lot of misunderstanding when one person talks about one definition and another one about the second definition. The original first generation of DAOs, and I call them classic DAOs, were indeed decentralized autonomous organizations. In this case, decentralized means that there was no dependency on a core team. So if the original people who started the organization will walk away and stop doing any work, the organization will still continue to exist and do what it promises to do. Autonomous means that the key functions or behaviors and rules of the organizations are encoded in the software that is run by blockchain. And therefore, even like if all the people kind of stop doing things, the software will continue to execute kind of key processes and key decisions. The reason why the classic DAOs become that way was because they were built around token-based projects. And when you trade token, there is considerations from security law. And generally, you want to be not seen as a security, but more like as a commodity. So more like, price of oil or price of gold, rather than like a Google share. In order to be seen as a commodity and avoid the security regulations, those early classic DAOs, they were leading towards being decentralized and autonomous so that they can be classified as not as securities. Over time, people realized there are a lot of advantages to the DAO structure. There is lots of benefits to being less like a traditional company and more self-organized and using blockchain setup as opposed to maybe registration in traditional national legal systems. And so the second generation of DAOs was born out of the ideas that the DAO structure has many advantages beyond just being like bypassing security regulation if you want to do token trading. And so the second generation of DAOs, they typically start centralized and human run. So they start centralized at the start. There is a core team, anchor operating company, and they do most of the decisions by humans, not like on-chain execution where things automatically happen if people vote for them. And over time, they become more autonomous and they become more decentralized, but it takes time. And therefore, they can't take this original advantage of the DAOs and introduce tokens right away because the tokens will be seen as a security. So they delayed the token launch and they operate more centralized, more like human in control without tokens on day one, but they use other advantages of DAOs and we will talk about them. And so the second generation of DAOs called flexible DAOs. And so these days in 2022, majority of new DAO projects are starting as flexible DAOs. They start centralized and led by humans at the start, and then they go towards the ideals of the classic DAOs. So today's call is all about how to build a successful flexible DAO. So what are the advantages then? Like if you don't start with the token right away, like what are the advantages of flexible DAOs? Well, there are three main advantages: fundraising, growth, and talent. So fundraising, if you structure your company as a DAO and you say eventually we will have a token, eventually we'll be traded on token exchanges like Coinbase, FTX, Binance, and Uniswap. And right now we raise money either through selling NFTs or through promising our future tokens in the form of token warrants. You can get really good terms from investors. So the token-based projects that will eventually become more like a classic DAOs but start as a flexible DAOs can raise a seed round with valuations $20, $30, $40 million, sometimes way more. And that's very attractive. It's like much higher valuations than seed stage funding for traditional companies. You also can challenge monopolies. So if you go to investors and say, well, I want to build a competitor to YouTube, if you're a traditional company, there is very little chance you'll get any money because YouTube is very strong. They have near monopoly status, they have great distribution, great engineering, great supply of content and creators, a strong ecosystem, a lot of very advanced tools, and so on. While if you say, well, we will be a token-based company and we'll give a bunch of future tokens and NFTs to people who are dissatisfied with YouTube. Everyone who is like unhappy, we'll give them a part of our new future project. And while we're still like catching up and not having everything in place, at least we have this coalition and alliance of people who dissatisfied with the current monopoly, and together we can build over time the credible alternative. And the reason why investors are so supportive of token-based projects and give them high valuation is very rational. And the main reason is that if you're a token-based project, eventually you go to those token exchanges, and on token exchanges, projects are valued at very high value. So if we talk about, like, for example, I don't know, Decentraland or Sandbox or Axie Infinity, those type of projects, they're all valued at, $10 billion or sometimes more. And they have, medium kind of progress. They have some users, they have some products, but it's not like they are already a big winners like YouTube or something. While the valuations are very high, and you would reach those valuations within 1 to 3 years after foundation, not 7 to 10 years like it is in NASDAQ on kind of traditional stock-based companies. So investors see that the valuations are very high in the late stage, and the late stage can be reached within 3 years. And once you reach it, your stake becomes liquid. And so investors are very inspired by high valuation and high liquidity of their investments, and therefore they're ready to overpay at the seed stage because they know it's a very attractive investment comparing to traditional equity investment, private equity investment. The second advantage is growth. If you want to grow in the last 20 years, the primary system of growth was advertising. So you raise a bunch of money from investors and then you spend like half of it on advertising and sales. DAOs give you an alternative. So you can build a group of contributors and ambassadors and influencers and celebrities who are inspired by your project and want to help out, and you give them NFTs and tokens in exchange before you have like a fully ready product and a lot of revenue and a lot of funding. And they start promoting your project to their kind of circles of influence and building your distribution and user base, customer base, and it works. So basically it works because you give them equity, part of the upside of your project, as opposed to like hard cash. And that gives you a serious alternative to advertising, because advertising becomes more expensive with every day, and it doesn't work that well. Conversions go low, people become like advertising blind, they like skip the advertising and they don't trust it as much, and there are privacy laws that limit the efficiency of advertising and so on. This kind of influencer marketing where you give your influencers tokens and NFTs as opposed to just one-time payment works really well. We expect it to work really well in the next 5 to 10 years, and being one of 2 or 3 major ways how you actually do go to market for any kind of project. And so any kind of project who want to utilize this kind of incentive-based, upside sharing-based growth strategy basically needs to either become a DAO or create a subsidiary DAO, like associate DAO, that is like driving your relationship with ambassadors and influencers. The third one is talent. So it's very hard to employ people traditionally following every like regulation from labor law. Let's say you want to employ part-time 1,000 people in 100 countries in 1 week. Traditionally, it's impossible. Too much legal forms and tax obligations and local laws to follow. Like, no one has time to read all of that. I recently tried to employ myself traditionally by myself, by a company owned by myself in California. It took me 20 forms to fill, like 5 SaaS services, and it asked me to insure myself against myself in case I will file a lawsuit by having a workplace injury. And I work from home. And so the amount of like the red tape in labor law in traditional economies, like especially Western markets, is huge. Especially if you want to employ people part-time, maybe semi-anonymously, pseudonymously, it is super hard. You would never employ 1,000 people part-time in 1 week across 100 countries. In crypto, it's much easier because you can invite people as contributors. You give them either tokens or NFTs or stable coins, or create a request for proposal or a grant making program. You can encourage people to vote for each other who deserves like the biggest promotion or payment. You can do automatic payments based on tasks completed or certain behavior within the DAO kind of governance or community and things like that. And also, no one needs to know which country you're from, and that gives them more freedom and more meritocracy between people from different countries, and give you like people get paid by the work, not by where they live. Also, I would say part-time, and especially a secret part-time, is a big driver. So there are a lot of people who have a high-profile job where they have no full satisfaction, and they want to have a side project. They want to have a second job, but they want to do it in secret. If you're like a venture partner in a famous like venture fund, or if you're a politician, or if you're having, I don't know, university job, you don't want to signal everyone that you're not fully dedicated to your primary main job. So you want to kind of keep it secret that you work somewhere else and that you do something interesting elsewhere. And the reality of 2022 is so many interesting things are happening. It's so hard to focus on a single job, and we have so many interests. I think a lot of people seek DAO employment to complement their kind of traditional primary career. So that's where DAO shines, is like you can bring very high caliber, very smart, expert level people who would never be available full time, but might be available as a DAO contributor. So essentially, the future of any employment would be having a company where 10 people work full-time and 1,000 people work part-time. So those are the 3 reasons why DAOs is super popular. Now, how you start a DAO? What are the kind of step-by-step process? What I'm going to do right now is to give you the playbook, the step-by-step general go-to-market plan for DAOs. These are the steps. The first one is planning or roadmap. That can be a single person. It's just writing on page, can be a Google Doc, Notion, or anything else, why you want to build a DAO, what is the purpose of that organization, what kind of good things you want to bring to the world, how it's gonna be fun and useful and interesting. You don't need to spend much time on this. I would say 2 hours is fine. You just need to like offload your ideas from your brain to a paper. That's it. The second step, and probably the crucial step, is a founding community. So you want to bring people around your idea and who share it, who like what you want to build, and maybe they have their own ideas and they want to change something. So you basically share your roadmap with 2 people, 10 people, 100 people. It can be at this point a chat, can be Telegram chat, can be Twitter chat, can be like DM group with 10 people, can be Discord, small Discord, anything works. iMessage, doesn't matter, email thread. You just start discussing. Is it the right name? Let's rename the project. Let's change the goal. Let's add some metrics. Let's split the mission into 3 submissions. I don't know, things like that. But basically, it's having a community discussion about the purpose, about the positioning, about the story of your DAO. Again, it can take 2 or 3 days. You don't need to do a lot of work. Ideally, at least one person involved is some sort of famous or well recognized, or has a lot of friends whom they can bring in. It's not a requirement, it's just good to have. So if you are a high energy person who doesn't have a lot of individual following in the area of the work of your DAO, reach out directly, coldly, to people who have more kind of weight and recognition in that field, and invite them to participate in the discussion about the DAO roadmap. Everyone is curious right now. We are living in the golden age of DAOs, where everyone would participate out of the curiosity, especially all the kind of frontier-oriented, future-looking, pioneer type, kind of early adopter type people. So you kind of facilitate the discussion. It can be a Zoom, can be a live stream, can be a chat, whatever it is. Again, 2 or 3 days, maybe second version of the roadmap is a result of this work. You're now actually ready to start a DAO. So the next step is to start a smart contract, and Superdao is perfect for that. You can put a smart contract on chain, and that describes your organization, gives it a name. A few people designated as executive members who have the power of the DAO, at least on the early period of time, like a core team. And then you have your smart contract. You can always add new modules for governance and treasury and contributor compensation and off-chain contracts and other things. But this is a good start. It's basically you have your DAO on chain. Now the next step is NFT collection. So most DAOs these days start with membership NFT collection, not token. There is a huge number of reasons for that. The main one is security law, because you don't want to create a security-like instrument and sell it to general public. And at the same time, you want to introduce the general public. You want to bring as many people as possible, especially qualified people who can help out to build your DAO. So you introduce the NFT collection. This is part of your smart contract. And then you do the NFT airdrop. That means free NFTs for pre-selected people. This is your founding community and maybe your founding influencers, people who you want to bring in. So now you're distributing your roadmap 2.0 that passed some community pre-approval, and then you say anyone who is like super excited and aligned get the NFT, like a founding tier, like limited edition, first 100, first 1,000 free NFTs. We really recommend to reach at least 100 NFTs that you give for free. You can eventually create multiple tiers with multiple kind of voting powers and permissions and so on. You can also start with a single image for all NFTs. You don't need to create an individual kind of custom, unique avatar class NFT. It can be just an image of a key or of a coin or of a ticket or of a, like some object that represents your DAO. So you do a free NFT airdrop, and now your community grows, and there is more interest, and there are more buzz, and more people retweet the description of your DAO. The next step is you introduced a paid NFT sale. Now you're selling NFTs. And when you sell NFTs oriented for utility, not security. So the main promise of the NFT is some useful stuff, not that that NFT will grow in value over time and you can sell it later for a profit. So what you say is, well, buy my NFT and you get three types of things. One, you get governance rights. So you can help vote on most important things about our DAO project and help us guide what we actually gonna build. So if you like building like a decentralized sports company that owns sports clubs, you can say, let's vote on which sports clubs we're gonna buy and what would be their shirt designs and what are the coaching decisions and how we name the stadium, things like that. The second one is social or community benefits. So this is about seeing who else is in the DAO, ability to meet new people, attend private events for members only, see some private content, and so on. And the third type of benefit is a product-based benefit. So this is like once you eventually build your products and services, this is ability to get, like, you write a book together, you get a free book. You build a sports team together, you get free tickets. You record a new musical album, you get the actual album, and so on. So it's a product-based discounts and free services that you promise to the NFT holders. So obviously the NFT holders can still sell that NFT. So they can buy the NFT for all those benefits and eventually change their mind and sell it to someone else. This is very similar to like tickets to a sports game. So you can buy tickets to a sports game or to a concert, and then just maybe a few days or one day before the concert, you realize you can't go. So you sell the ticket instead of going there. Maybe you sell it with a profit. Maybe the concert is sold out and there are more people who want to get there. So the NFT might have the upside, but it's not the primary reason for why you do it. So this is utility NFT. Typically, people who do it successfully sell anywhere from few hundred, like 1, 2, 3, 500, to a few thousand. I would say 1,000 to 10,000 NFTs. The average, across all the projects, the average price for NFT right now, I think about $200. So if you sell like, 1,000 NFTs, you might raise, $200,000. If your average price is much higher, say $500 or $1,000, and you sell like a few thousand of those, you might raise a few million. So it might raise $1 million, might raise 5 million, might raise up to 10 million probably. For most projects, it's not enough. So it's not enough to fulfill your mission and build what you want to build. But you've built a community and you've built the early adopters, the people who like bought your NFT because they believe that you can build what you promised them to build. The next step is that you go to professional accredited investors, venture firms, both from traditional kind of venture investment side and the crypto native firms and maybe some investment DAOs and so on. And you say, hey, we have this project, we sold the NFTs, we earned some, collected some money, but it's not enough, we want to get more money. And the investors will tell you, well, we'll give you money, but we don't like your NFTs. Give us your future tokens. And so you sell them a new combination, which is equity in the operating company, the underlying company that represents the core team members. So let's say there are thousands of people in your DAO, but there are like 10 people who do most of the work. So those 10 people have a separate company that's not a DAO. It's called an operating company. And when the investors come in, they will buy a share, traditional equity share in the operating company, alongside with promise of some number of future tokens. That's called token warrant. So you can privately to accredited investors sell private equity in your operating company with token warrants on the side. And that can be, a transaction 5, 10, 20, $100 million. So the amount that you can raise with equity plus token warrants can be pretty significant. So that's great. And now you have enough capital to build the thing that you want to build. You might have even a couple rounds that both of them are equity plus token warrants. And then you spend from few months to few years building your products and services. Once you have them ready, you can eventually introduce a token. And then that token will be delivered as promised to investors. It will be delivered to some of the core team members. It might be airdropped to original NFT holders as a kind of sign of gratitude for them to participate. I might also give some tokens to key ecosystem partners, people who integrate with your protocol or standard or support you in any other way. And by that time, the role of operating company reduces. There might be other operating companies who also receive tokens and participate in the same kind of network or ecosystem or community under the same or similar rules. And at that time, the token is less of a security and more of a commodity because it represents a form of payment to the services of that ecosystem that represented by multiple operating companies and the overall kind of things that your guys are building. And at that time, you can bring that token to exchanges, to FTX, Binance, Coinbase, Uniswap, and so on. And at that point, the token, fully diluted token valuation probably is in several $1 billion. So that's the journey, that's the typical journey for a successful DAO project on a market in 2022. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the legal stuff. So we already introduced the concept of operating company and a DAO. So operating company represents the few full-time founding members of the DAO who do the work. In other case, you already have the operating company, maybe a big traditional Web2 company, and you create a DAO on the side. In this case, again, there is a big operating company and there is a DAO. Sometimes there is a single founder and that person is an individual, so they are operating individual, and then there is a DAO. In any case, there is an operating entity, kind of operating anchor, and a DAO. People ask, where do you register as traditional legal entity the operating company? And the answer is wherever you like. Like, there is no restriction and there is no argument against any choice. You can have an LLC in the state where you live. You can have a Delaware C Corp. You can have an offshore entity like British Virgin Islands or Cayman Islands or whatever. You can be in Europe, you can be in Asia, you can be just a physical person, like individual person. Anything works. So the goal and the purpose of the operating entity is to do primarily off-chain work. So if you need to pay for Notion or Google Docs, or if you need to buy a real estate or rent a venue to host an event, or pay someone in traditional fiat money, or pass KYC check at your, and open a traditional bank account, whatever you need to do any of that, you do that not as a DAO, but as an operating company. So this approach, when you have basically two sister organizations, a DAO and an operating company, it's called legal anchoring. And the operating company is sometimes called an anchor. It's basically a thing that connects DAO to a physical world. There was an alternative approach called legal wrapping, when you would try to create a full legal entity that represents and kind of displays the full DAO as a legal entity, but that most people concluded that was too hard, it's too much work, and the DAO changes every second who is in it, who is not, and how it's governed. So it's too much work, and in most cases you don't need to do that. Some DAOs might have multiple operating entities and so on. All right, so beyond security law and delaying the token launch until you have true utility behind your project, there is other kind of legal regulation. The second most important legal regulation that we discuss is employment. So when DAO has a contributors and the DAO pays them in stable coins or in Ether or in its own native token or give them NFTs and so like that, there is essentially some form of employment relationship. It might be not a traditional employment because the DAO doesn't tell contributors what to do, it just tells them what they can do. There is no working hours, there might be no identity reveal, so you don't even know who is working for you. But there is a relationship. So right now, this relationship is treated as a foreign income. So if the DAO contributor receives some money from a DAO, they declare it as a personal income from a foreign source. Because the DAO kind of exists on the internet, not in the country where you work. That will change. How it will change and when it will change, we don't know. I expect that to go similar cycles as Uber and Airbnb. It's a new type of relationship. It's not a gig economy. It's not traditional employment. It's not a contractor relationship. It's something new. There is no laws for it, no regulation. So we'll just keep an eye on that. But I don't expect any adversarial legal action from countries. I think initially it would be just more discovery and kind of trying to understand where things are going and so on. There might be individual cases when there would be more aggressive from the government side. I don't recall a single adversarial action for any government saying, no, please don't work for DAOs. Even the opposite, what we expect to see is a concept of DAO havens. And the DAO havens are the few places in the world that as DAO friendly as you can ask them to be. So they say, please, DAOs, have your legal anchor here. If you have the income from DAO, we don't tax that. Or If the DAO has a profits, we don't tax that either. If they declare to be like legally kind of anchored to our physical region and jurisdiction and so on. So I think there will be a lot of DAO friendly places who give you kind of some sort of shielding. They will give you a legal standing in their place. Great. So that's on the legal side. Now, once you have a DAO, essentially how to run a DAO. There are 4 elements, and we can dive in if someone already getting close to DAO operating stage. But basically, it's governance, asset management, access, and contributor management. So governance is making decision, voting. So there are like 1 person, 1 vote, 1 NFT, 1 vote, or proportional to the tokens, or it might be some additional rules. You need to hold the tokens for a period of time. It might be that if you have the token and NFT, then your NFT doubles your vote on token. And if you don't have the NFT, just the token, then you vote with a smaller coefficient. There are different systems. You can also delegate your voting power to like a representative, being more like, a parliamentary system, like a liquid democracy, some people call it. So there are many ideas. There are also idea of sub-DAOs where people split to individual committees like marketing and treasury and grant making and so on. You might also do elected officials when you vote for a person, and then that person has a full local autonomy and authority to make like small spending decisions by themselves. Asset management, you can hold your own token and NFTs from other projects, and buy stable coins and Ether and Bitcoin and currencies for blockchains like Matic and Sol for Solana and so on. So that's kind of asset management, like taking loans, staking your treasury assets, earning interest, things like that. Access, it's basically private events, token gated resources that are only available to people who hold your tokens and NFTs. And then contributor management is what we discussed: fluid deployment, grant making, requests for proposals, task-based compensation, and so on. Yeah, so I think that's the quick crash course on what's going on with DAOs. Now I want to talk a little bit about what Superdao does here. So Superdao is the easiest way to start your DAO. And specifically, we take your inputs. It can take like a few minutes, a few hours, where we basically say, what's the name of your DAO? What are the tiers in your founding NFT membership collection? Do you have an artwork? And things like that. And we create a smart contract for you. It's upgradable, extendable, and you can change and edit it and whatnot. And we deploy it on chain. We're currently live on Ethereum and Polygon. We will go to more chains soon, including Solana and potentially Near and Algorand and Avalanche and others like that, Binance. And then the second thing that we provide is what we call the DAO workspace. And so the DAO workspace is a place where you can do basic, most important things like member directory, sharing content for members only, kind of DAO newsfeed, task board where you show like things that you can do for the DAO, and onboarding area where you explain the DAO members what they can do, and treasury dashboard where you can see what are the things collectively you own as a DAO, and so on. So that's the DAO, like all-in-one DAO workspace. So we also like advise people on how to set up their individual DAOs and trying to be as responsive and helpful as we can.